When I was younger, maybe between the ages of 6 and 8, I had experienced the sightings of 2 apparent ghosts. I remember one time I was woken up to what I can only assume was a loud noise, due to the fact that I was a heavy sleeper and never woke up during the night. So I woke up this night, and I turned over in the bed and I see a little girl standing beneath the window in my room on a chair. This girl, from what I can remember, was wearing a white dress and holding a brown teddy bear. This girl also had blonde hair. I, at first, believed it was my sister, and so I asked her what she was doing in my room, and to my surprise, the girl simply just laughed. I got freaked out, so I turned around and closed my eyes tightly. I didn't dare to turn around, but when I finally did, the girl was gone. I was freaked out, so I went downstairs to sleep on the couch. This is one such incident from when I was younger. I also used to have conversations with the man with white hair and blue eyes. I would have the conversations with this man about my life and other simple things that a young child could understand. These conversations took place over the period of around half a year. One day I went to my grandmother's house and saw a picture of this man on the wall. I told my grandma that this was the man with white hair and blue eyes, and she then freaked out to the rest of the family. This was apparently my great-grandfather that I was talking to, who passed away waiting for me to be born. The story is especially important to me, due to the fact that, as a young child, I had the gift of meeting my great-grandfather from beyond the grave. It all happened at Easter weekend. My mother's boyfriend, my mother, my sister, and me were driving to my grandparents' house. While on the highway, it started to heavily rain, like a really huge downpour. The windshield was completely covered in big raindrops, and you couldn't see anything. Even from the backseat window, you were not able to even make out the road. Then, it all happened very fast. The car started to drift from side to side 3 or 4 times. Then the car overturned about 3 times and all of a sudden stopped. My mom instantly got out of the car to get my sister out, who was sitting right behind her in the passenger seat. I was sitting behind the driver and wanted to wake him up to get out. I only could touch his shoulder and catch a quick glimpse of his head, which was cracked open at the top of the skull. I literally saw his skull in his brain. My mom pulled me out of the car and we waited for the ambulance to arrive. Some drivers just drove past us, but one couple stopped. They gave us blankets and an umbrella and they waited with us. Back at home, I couldn't find sleep at night and I didn't know why, until I saw him. He was standing there every night in the doorway to my room and silently watched me. I could only make out the silhouette of a tall man. He was completely black. I wasn't able to make out eyes in all this blackness, but I could feel that he was staring at me. Out of fear, I snuck into my sister's room and slept at her feet every night. This was going on for about 4 to 6 months, and then it stopped all of a sudden when my uncle took us to do yoga, the meditative type. As it stopped, I told my sister and my mother about the nights and the black man standing in the doorway. And my sister just laughed and left, but my mom was as pale as a face could get and told me not to worry about it. 6 or 7 years later, I started a conversation with my mom about that accident and the black man. My mom told me that as the car turned over, she could feel a kind of pressure on her chest, like someone was holding her in her seat. Since that day, she also started to get very spiritual with angels and tarot cards and that kind of stuff. About the black man, she said it was probably an angel watching over me, but it surely didn't feel like it. I have no idea who or what it was, but I've never seen him again. I don't care if you believe me, but this is 100% exactly true. My cat got run over by a car, instantly dead. I missed her and I was devastated. That night, I dreamed of her wandering her usual places and looking confused that nobody would interact with her. I woke up uneasy. I felt like she was unable to pass on and it was my fault. She loved her collar and I took it off of her before we buried her so she could be free. I felt I shouldn't have done that and I debated digging her up and putting the collar back on her, but my parents told me I was nuts. I had another dream, and this time I saw my granddad, who had been dead for several years by then. He was sitting on a rocking chair by a fireplace. Suddenly he stood up and walked away. Then the scene changed to him picking up my cat and curling her up against him as they walked away. They never met in real life. I got her way later after he died. But the beautiful room with the fireplace must have been his slice of heaven, and he took her there because he knew she was lost. I hope they're in that rocking chair by that fire, possibly gossiping about me because I like to think animals can talk there. I don't know, that's all. So I'm not exactly sure if this is the right place for this, but I think it's worth posting. For some context, about a month ago, my mother was getting a knee replacement. She had been stressed about it, and I felt a bit stressed for her, as she was worried something was going to go wrong. Also, her father was alive at the time, and about 88 years old. He wasn't in my life, and my mother hadn't seen him in years. I'll explain how he relates to the knee replacement later. Anyway, about 2 weeks before my mother's surgery, I, 20 female, have a dream about my grandfather passing away a day before the surgery. It wasn't a nightmare or anything. I just remember that in the dream, my mom got a phone call about his passing. I woke up and didn't think much of the dream. I get weird or sad dreams like that often, no big deal. Well, that next week, my mother calls me and tells me that her father passed away in the night. He passed early in the morning on Friday, and Mom's knee surgery was the following Monday. Immediately, I think of that dream, although I don't tell my mom that as I'm not sure what she'd think. So, could this have been a premonition? I've never had a dream like this before that I recall. And I had no reason to think my grandfather was going to die. He had hip surgery not long before his death, and I guess that eventually led to his passing, although I'd been under the impression that it had gone well. The only logical reason I can think of for having this dream is I was worried about something going wrong with my mom's knee replacement. But even then, why would I dream of her father passing? If anything, I think I would dream about the surgery itself going wrong, not her father, who I haven't seen since I was 6. What do you guys think? Just a coincidental connection my mind made, or a genuine premonition? So, unfortunately, my cousin was killed by a drunk driver 2 years ago. 2 days after his death, I had a vivid dream. Myself and my cousin were in a desert, surrounded by a group of friends. I couldn't put faces to the friends, but in the dream there was a warm feeling that they were our friends, but no one specific. The dream would then change to me sitting on a wooden walkway with fishing gear, waiting for my cousin to arrive, but he never showed up. The dream switched back to the desert, and there was a bus. I had this overwhelming feeling of panic that he was on the bus, and that I had to stop it from leaving, but the bus left and I didn't manage to stop it. I then looked over my shoulder and he was standing behind me with a big, beaming smile on his face. And then the dream ended. The whole time I was in this dream, a song was playing in the background. It was like the theme tune to the whole dream. The song was engraved in my mind relentlessly the whole next day, and it was Green Day's Good Riddance Time of Your Life. A few weeks passed and I attended his funeral. I sat down with my family, picked up the prayer cards, and started to look through the pictures of him. On front of the prayer card was a photo of him with a massive beaming smile, just like when I looked over my shoulder in the dream. We were not very close as we grew older. He moved away and we both had different lives, so I didn't know any of his interests as he got older. Turns out he was massively into fishing, loads of pictures of him holding fish he had caught, which would explain me waiting on the lake with fishing gear for him. The strangest thing was that the farewell song that was listed on the prayer card and played as everyone left the funeral, it was Green Day Good Riddance Time of Your Life. I spoke to my uncle afterwards, and it turns out it was his favorite song. I've been told that I'm some kind of gateway and that spirits are guided toward me as I'm an easy route for them to make contact. I told his mom and sisters about the dream, and they all agreed that he had come to say goodbye, and perhaps I was there to pass on the message. Last night, or this morning rather, I experienced something I can't exactly explain. I have always approached most things paranormal with some healthy skepticism. However, as my presence on this sub suggests, I have entertained the thought that inexplicable things likely happen to us on an everyday basis if we're paying attention. It started out as a run-of-the-mill restless night's sleep. College, relationships, and copious amounts of stuff and video games have truly left my sleeping schedule a wreck, to say the least. That said, waking up occasionally throughout the night is not exactly out of the ordinary for me. But last night, it was like a never-ending nightmare. Not in the sense that it was unbearable, but every time I woke up and inevitably drifted back to sleep, I would return to the same dream. This went on for what seemed like hours until I had somehow broken the chain and found myself in a different dreamscape entirely. I don't remember much of the nightmare that preceded this moment, but this part of my dream remains crystal clear to me. I woke up in the countryside, rolling hills and grassy plains, not too outlandish given that I live in a farm town in Ohio, but the setting was entirely unrecognizable. The rolling terrain stretched impossibly far, and the unnatural hazy white light that coated the landscape made me feel uneasy. It was kind of like being inside the moon in Majora's Mask for my fellow nerds out there. At any rate, aside from the trees that dotted the landscape, the only feature I saw was a woman standing before me. I didn't recognize her. The only quality that I can specifically remember is that she was wearing a white gown of sorts. I'm hesitant to call it a dress. It almost seemed like sleeping attire, but not anything I recognized. It's hard to say, but I wouldn't be surprised if her clothes were from a different time period. Once I analyzed the settings, I moved without thinking and approached the woman. "Shouldn't you be asleep?" I spoke, not really understanding why. She seemed to regard me for a moment before replying, not looking back at me. "I can't when she's here. Sleeping lets her in." I can recall the pang of dread that hit me when she said this. I had absolutely no reason to assume anything was necessarily wrong. After all, the otherworldly quality of the world I was set in was giving me the slow realization that I was in a dream. But there was something off. Something heavy in the air as soon as those words left her lips. I couldn't stop myself. "Is she here?" Without speaking another word, she simply pointed out across the horizon. As I turned my head to look, my world came closing in. Instantly, my heart was full of bile. I couldn't breathe. That awful, nauseating feeling of fear and panic. My vision went blurry. My eyes were ringing. The impossible sensation of crushing weight pressing in on my head left me reeling. I didn't hear her, and I didn't see her. I'm not even sure if I felt her. But whatever presence was there was evil. Or it had evil intent, at least. And then, it was over. I forced myself awake, literally gasping for breath. My head rang from fatigue and something else. The dream felt so real, and the pain certainly remained. My body felt sluggish, yet my mind was racing. I stumbled out of my room and made a beeline for the living room couch. It took some time and an absurd amount of bright, comforting Christmas movies. Watch Klaus on Netflix, it's great. Might even scare the ghosts away. But I finally calmed myself enough to ease myself into a deep, dreamless sleep. Of course, I had to tell my family as soon as I saw them. I needed to say it out loud to convince myself that I wasn't alone, but this may have been a mistake. My mom, a very witty and bubbly woman, sat in silence throughout the whole story, silently nodding or resting her hand on my shoulder in my moments of distress, but otherwise she made no comments on my experience. Afterwards, to my horror, she described to me the woman in my dreams. At our previous house, when my sister and I were toddlers, my mom had a dream of a blonde woman in a white gown who would lock herself inside our room. My mom recalls pounding on the door, begging and screaming for this intruder to leave her babies alone. My dad said he had the same dream that night. They bolted out of bed, busted our door open to find my sister and I sleeping soundly, just as they had left us. I can't decide if this was truly the same woman or not. And I can't decide if she was truly evil or not. Perhaps the woman I was warned about was something this lady in white had tried to protect me from as an infant. Maybe she came to me to warn me as an adult. I'm not sure. All I know is I had to get this out here. Thank you to all who read this long and rambly tale. Please do let me know what you think. Hey there, I hope you enjoyed this collection of paranormal stories. Did those stories sound awfully familiar to you? 'Cause they should. Those are the stories I did in my first video on this channel. Thought I would go ahead and redo them. Do them in my newer style, do them in my newer cadence. Just kind of do them the way I do things now, and I think they turned out pretty damn good, so hopefully you all enjoyed them. If you did, please do subscribe to the channel. I'm not going to go full spiel on this one just because I want to get this video done and move on to the next. Yesterday was a great day of celebration. 3 videos today, 1 video. Tomorrow should be 3, and then Friday should be 2, and then the weekend should be 1 a day. So we're moving along here, and yeah, making good progress. Hopefully you guys are enjoying the celebration so far. See you in the next video, but until then, sleep well.